We are here today with Nicolás Max. He's Director of Asset Management at Criteria, an asset management firm based in Buenos Aires, Argentina, who, in my humble opinion, is the best person to talk to right now regarding everything Argentina. So hopefully in this conversation, you'll get a better sense of what has happened, what are the catalysts, and what to look for. And finally, the opportunities and risks embedded in this uh, situation. I'm not sure if to call it. I'm not ready to call it a crisis yet. Nicolas would be would be better fit to do so. But certainly, it's something that has caught the investors' zeitgeist, and hopefully, we'll have a better understanding of what's going on and what can happen afterwards. So, Nicolás, welcome and thank you for joining us.
No, thank you, Horacio, for inviting me to have the opportunity to share with you and your audience and clients our thoughts regarding the current situation in Argentina.
Great. So let's dive in. First, could you tell us, or could you provide a high level overview of the primary drivers behind the event or behind the recent market events in Argentina? How much of this is tied to Milei's policies versus how much is it due to the policies of the past? Yes.
Okay. Let's begin with that question. First of all, the reasons behind these last episodes, one new episode in Argentine financial history, are, I think, that it both attributable both to government policies and some structural issues that Milei inherited when he came in to the government. I think that the latter played a larger role in explaining what's going on in Argentina right now. There is no any doubt that Milei did an enormous and an incredible job correcting the fiscal and monetary imbalances, but he implemented, I would say, less convincing policies regarding to the external fraud, regarding to the treatment of the FX policy. His goal was bringing inflation down to international levels at a very fast pace, which he did. At the same time that he had a very strong control over monetary supply, and that resulted in a policy that prioritized an appreciated peso, a strong peso. Of course, he has success doing this, but he sacrificed having an external liquidity buffer by adding dollar reserves.
Right.
The reason behind this order, the reason that he determined this order of priorities is that the government interpreted that the population voted him in order to slash inflation, which is, of course, true. But there's another second mandate that Milei had, that is reigniting growth after more than 10 years of an economy that is in stagnation, and of course keep the job market alive. So, I mean, the second part of this, let's say, voter demand was not really accomplished, because the economy has not grown for the last, I would say, 3 quarters. I mean, the economy in Argentina is technically in recession. So this is something that is attributable to Milei in comparison with the other issues that are more political and structural, I would say.
Right. So thanks. Now, this is something that I just thought of. What would you say are the reasons of Milei's drive to protect or to have a strong peso? Are those reasons political, or because in the end that prevented him from building reserves? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the strong peso was used as an anchor in order to bring inflation down
Okay.
very fast. I mean, that was the main reason. I mean, politically, it's also appealing to have a strong peso because people feel more rich. Their dollar purchasing power goes up, and that also is something that the population after having a lot of years with salaries very depreciated in dollars, it's also politically something that it's appealing for any government. But the strongest motive was to bring down inflation, to have an anchor to bring down inflation down rapidly.
Interesting. Right. Yeah, and I just want to add that for our audience that is not familiar with these dynamics in emerging markets, especially in Latin America. I think both in Argentina and Mexico, but it's likely that it is even more pronounced in Argentina. In Argentina, we locals tend to compare what we earn in our local currency or what we can buy with our local currency with dollars. So if we have a strengthening local currency versus the US dollar, then you get this either it may be just a perception because purchasing power is not often it's not necessarily tied to the foreign exchange level, but it can be, as you said, it can be an appealing political incentive to do so.
Right.
Great, thank you. And beyond the headlines, what are the one or two economic indicators that you might be looking for, or that you are currently monitoring most closely to gauge the direction of this sequence of events?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, given that we are already used in Argentina, which is something very strange. I mean, but during Milei's presidency, we already got used to having fiscal surpluses. So that was, I mean, like a given. So I would say that the most important indicator would be central bank, the evolution of central bank reserves as a byproduct of treasury dollar net purchases. That's the main variable that we are looking to. In the second place, I would say peso interest rates and the capacity of the treasury to roll over local peso debt. And third in the podium, I would say inflation measures, also to interpret the level of or to read the level of pass-through that the almost 20% devaluation of the peso, nominal devaluation of the peso had on local prices. No, so that's very important in order to know if with this new regime, with fiscal surpluses, with limited, with a strong monetary control, the FX devaluation, how much of the FX devaluation translates into local prices. That's how the most, I would say, from a macro or financial and macro point of view, main indicators. But unfortunately, the real indicator is one that we must wait to happen on October the 26th, when the midterm parliamentary elections takes place. That's the most relevant issue at this point, and of course, it is completely out of government control.
Right. Interesting. And now, looking at the role that the IMF plays, I mean, the U.S. government or the U.S. Treasury just announced potential significant support, including $20 billion US swap line. Is this a credible and sufficient a backdrop to restore confidence, or do you really need a positive or a favorable or a market-friendly outcome of the midterm elections?
Yeah, if this support that was announced via X by Besant and also by Trump is real, and I mean, this would be without precedent. I mean, the FMI already is supporting Argentina in a big size credit, the biggest country, the biggest creditor of the IMF by large is Argentina. So the support from the IMF is already there. So, I mean, it's very clear that we have or the government has a clear political support, and that's an advantage. That's a credit that we have to give to Milei from his strong alliance with the U.S. administration. And I think that, I mean, geopolitically, Milei has become the man from Mexico to the in the region from downwards from Mexico, because I mean we have to remember that in this neighborhood we have Lula, Boric in Chile, Lula in Brazil, Petro in Colombia, Maduro. So Milei is maybe the only relevant U.S. ally in the region. So that's why we think that the U.S. has manifested the intention to support Milei government. But we think that this is not something that it's already done, and we have to wait till the elections in order to have more clarity on the real content of the aid.
Interesting. And now that we touched on that, how do you think, or how are you pricing Argentine sovereign dollar bonds right now? Or how do you see the yield curve pricing a potential election outcome? Versus, like, do you see the market expectations is tilted more towards default or recovery?
Okay, on this topic, I mean, we in the firm we recently ran an analysis based on different future scenarios. In Argentina, we have the fresh, we have very fresh experience of the boom and bust that political changes produce in Argentine asset prices during the last 25 years. I mean, we are used to very, volatile and changing political and macro scenarios. To make it short, the outcome is that asset prices, bond prices right now are showing an even probability of a continuation of these market-friendly policies versus the return of the economic recipes that push the country out of international markets. So, I mean, there is no clear indication yet that prices have reached value in order to bet on a bullish view on Argentine either equities and hard currency bonds.
Interesting. So there is no clear direction, or there is no confidence in either outcome by market pricing, or expressed in market pricing.
Exactly. That's the best definition.
Interesting. And now, conversely, like, where do you see the most compelling opportunities arising from this volatility? Are there distressed assets, either in corporate debt or equities, that you find attractive from a risk-reward perspective?
Distressed assets in Argentina, I mean, suddenly almost everything is distressed. But I would not say distressed. I mean, not really distressed, not yet, at least. But we are recommending a defensive posture, I would say. We are telling our clients to buy hard currency and high quality corporates from the oil and gas sector, companies like TGS, Petrol, Vista, Pampa, those kind of oil and gas leaders that are producing increasing amounts of revenues from oil and gas in Vaca Muerta. And on the equity side, we like the Vista story after the sharp correction, almost 50% that it suffered. The market as a whole, we like that, and we are not going. I mean, we are going to reevaluate this positioning after the election.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it'll be an interesting moment to decide or to enter certain sectors for sure. And turning to other asset class, after last week's run on the peso and the subsequent rally, do you see a forced evaluation as a base scenario, base case scenario for investors, or are there implications of a of an evaluation for the subsequent recovery?
Good question. I think that first of all, I should mention that a very interesting development that had happened during this year in terms of the value of the local currency. The currency already with all this turmoil has already depreciated almost 30% when measured in a multilateral real exchange rate. So the currency is not as appreciated as it was at the beginning of this year. So if there is still a pending adjustment for the currency, it should be less pronounced that in the case that this dynamic that I described would have not happened. But of course, again, the devil is again on the political front, and a bad outcome for the government in the election may overshoot the depreciation of the peso, and that can have immediate effects on inflation, activity, and political support for the government. So if the election goes relatively even and the government has a relatively good result, I think that the currency is not very far from where it should be. But in the other cases, as described, the situation could evolve very negatively. So that's mainly our thoughts regarding where the currency can go. No?
Right, and that's an interesting.
Let me add something here, Horacio.
Yes.
In the case, in the good scenario, the scenario that the government performs well in the election, it would not be a bad development to have a depreciated currency or a not so appreciated currency as we had last year, because this would allow the government to replenish the level of reserves. No, that would show we would have better external accounts, and that would be good news in terms of the government being capable of replenish hard currency reserves. No, that's an important thing to point.
No, and that's actually an excellent point, because doing a bit of research for our conversation, I think there are significant maturities being due on September of next year in hard currency. So that's also good to have in mind. It's also interesting that you look at this depreciation or appreciation dynamic of the peso beyond the US dollar, because as we've seen, the US dollar has the value of the US dollar against major peers has declined significantly in a historical perspective this year. So looking at how the currency stands versus other currencies, it's helpful to have in mind when the next big move happens. Now, given that Argentina is a major commodity exporter, how does this impact Argentinian commodities, especially, for instance, soybeans? Or does this event or represent a potential catalyst for the commodities market?
I'm not a specialist in the commodities market, but I would say that in the government in its desperate search of dollars has recently reduced the export taxes to 0%, up to a limit of 7 billion export sales. So this incentive for exporters to liquidate exports in a very short period or frame period of time has already, produced a short-term pressure on soybean prices. But this, in the long run, this is not. It should not change price dynamics for soybean. It's only a short-term effect, I would say. And in the long run, of course, if the government complies with its promise of reducing export taxes in the long run, crop production should be higher because this tax, of course, affects profitability and production levels. But this is not something that it's going to happen in the foreseeable future. Not in the immediate future. So Argentina, in the long run, is capable of having biggest levels of production. And that is negative for pricing, but it's not something that it's going to happen in the short term.
Right, interesting. And I just to clarify, this this measure of driving export taxes to 0%, is that a temporary measure, and is that across all industries, or is that just specific industries?
It's farm production, grains and cattle.
Oh, okay.
It's not for every product that Argentina exports.
Right. Interesting. Great. Now, you and I know the importance of being aware of the potential differences between local investors and international investors. So I think a very valuable question to ask is, what do you hear from investors on the ground? Are they significantly positioned significantly different? Are their positions significantly different from international investors, or how are they positioning themselves before the election?
Let's say that in the first place, during the last years, the local market is completely dominated by local investors. There is relatively small weight of foreign investors in our local market. Maybe during the last part of 2024, when everyone was very bullish on Argentina, I recall Druckenmiller talking marvelous on Argentina's future. That created a very, let's say, a bubble. Everyone was very happy that Trump won the election in the US, and that would be a good thing for Argentina, while all other regional markets were going down, Argentina was going up. And at that point, there was more optimism on foreign investors, and everyone was taking positions in Argentina. But during this year, this this confidence reversed because of mainly it's an electoral year and the slow progress in building FX reserve. I would say that disappointed many of the real money funds that I had the opportunity to talk to. So they have been, I mean, during the year they have been lightening positions. And I said on hard currency bonds, on the local market, on peso debt, the positions are very small. I mean, there is only 2 billion. I mean, the last official numbers show only $2 billion invested in peso instruments. So that's very, very little figure in relative to the total market.
Right. Yeah, I mean, correct me, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Argentina, Merval was the best performing stock market in 2024. Is that right?
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, completely right. It's the best performer in 24 and the worst performer in 25.
Welcome to emerging markets.
Welcome to Argentina. Yeah, the boom and bust.
Right. Now, so if you were to talk to an international investor or a global portfolio manager, what is the most effective way to hedge that risk right now? Are there liquid instruments or reliable proxies that you would recommend?
Yeah, for local investors, there are a couple of ways to hedge local macro risk. There is a very active and liquid forex futures market, and government and corporates also when they issue debt with its capital adjusted for inflation or adjusted by the evolution of the exchange peso dollar exchange rate. So those are the most common ways of protecting your portfolio from losing purchasing power. But for foreign investors, I mean, there is the traditional NDF market in New York and CDS market, which are not as liquid as when we would expect in order to manage the portfolio in a risk control fashion.
Right. Yeah. And would you say, I mean, as important as this election is, looking ahead, I mean, because thinking about our conversation, I remember Milei got into office without a legislative majority, right? He didn't have.
Right.
So these midterm elections that are for that branch of government, why does Milei having a better or even not only a majority but a significant favorable outcome matter now when once he got into office he had less than what polls are showing now in terms of legislative support?
Yeah, sorry, Horacio, could you repeat the last question?
Yeah, so I'm thinking because now everyone is focused on the legislative support for Milei and how that is going to look after the election on October 26th. But when Milei got into office, he didn't have a majority, right?
Right.
So why does it matter more now that he have a majority than when he got into office?
Yeah, I mean, in his first, let's say, almost 2 years of presidency, it's true that he has very, very little presence, not only in Congress, in both chambers, but also he had no governors in any of the 24 Argentine districts, provinces. But he had a very strong social and popular support.
Okay.
But I mean, at least in the minds of every politician, every opposition and government politician. I mean, that was like a reality. But what happened on September 7th is that he had a very strong, surprising and strong defeat in the main province in Argentina, province of Buenos Aires, which has almost 40% of the population. He was defeated, and that changed the perception that the society was still supporting him. So that's why all the expectations around this election changed, and all the surveys were showing Milei winning the election in the range of getting 40 or 45% of the vote. But it is not what the last surveys and the last data is showed. So this is the main change in terms of his power, that was, I mean, and the possibility of in this election reverting these strong minorities that he has in both chambers.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I think that also provides a better color or a better background for our audience. I would like to probably, this might be the last question. But what are you most concerned about, and what are you most hopeful about in Argentina? I mean, I know that there is this upcoming election, but let's say, regardless of the outcome, what would you be most hopeful about?
I mean, of course, the biggest concern for everyone here is that if Milei is not capable of, despite having a bad result or a mediocre result, if he's not capable of building strong alliances with the rational opposition, I would say, there is a concern that he would not be able to pass very important reforms that are still pending in order to revive, in order to reignite Argentine economy. I mean, that's the main investor concern. So in that case, if he is not able to pass these reforms and markets don't give him confidence, and country risk doesn't go down enough to have access to voluntary debt markets, that would be a very, let's say, negative scenario in terms of expectations, and very difficult for him to have the social support in order to have a good result in case in the next presidential election in 2027. So everything would be, let's say, aborted, and we don't know what's next. Big question mark of what's going to be next in terms of policies in Argentina.
Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I'm again, as I was preparing for this, I read that governors are power players in Argentina and have more weight than in other democracies or in other countries. Is it true that they might be waiting until the outcome of the election to negotiate future alliances?
Yes, they are reluctant to negotiate anything at this stage. I mean, two reasons. I mean, first of all, after the elections in Provincia de Buenos Aires, there is less incentive for them to negotiate now, because they perceive that the government is weak. So they perceive that, or that they incentivized to wait until the election in order to get better terms for their negotiation. But I think they are willing to negotiate. we cannot be sure, or we cannot assure that Milei would be open to negotiations, because I mean he has been showing a very confrontative style during these almost 2 years of presidency. But maybe, I mean, he has no choice, and then he can be more open-minded and negotiate with Congress. In that case, what we would be watching for is what's the fiscal cost, what's the fiscal price in terms of expenditures when he goes and negotiate with governments. I mean, because it's not, of course, it's not going to be free, and they are going to ask for more resources. And in that case, I mean, what's going to happen with the fiscal front? That's our main questions.
Interesting. And do you think that the next step would be to have a different monetary policy, or a consistent exchange and monetary policy? Because one of the questions that I thought, and I also thought that would be interesting to ask, is, given how close the official rate is to the blue, or to the free market rate, the government still has capital controls, and hasn't freed, or hasn't adopted a free market foreign exchange policy. Do you think that'll be an easy or the next step after the election?
Maybe the government would be less concerned about getting inflation down so rapidly, because I mean the elections are behind, and they don't need to show the population that they were getting inflation down, and once the election is behind, maybe they feel more free in order to let the currency depreciate or float in a more freely way. So that's something that could happen. Of course, in Argentina, it's very important the pace and the level. No, if it's something that is disorderly, it would, as I said before, it would be very, very disruptive for inflation, activity, and popular support. If it's something that is, let's say, as orderly as it can be, with the support of the US, some liquidity from the US, that could help, and that could help to moderate the level, the pace of depreciation, the volatility, essentially. So there is also a good scenario in that case. We shouldn't discard. I mean, it's something that it's perfectly possible to happen. But it's very, very tight again with the result in the election. What the government does, what Milei does with that result. I mean, how open is he to negotiate and to bring the rational opposition to the government.
Right. Interesting. Great. Thanks, Nicolás. So maybe my final question, and I think this will be on everyone's mind next year. Does Argentina take the World Cup in 2026?
Sorry, Horacio, I couldn't have you.
Oh, no worries. So yeah, one of I think what will be in everyone's mind in 2026 is, does Argentina take the World Cup? Do you become champions again next year?
We hope. I mean, it's very difficult to do it twice in a row. I mean, but we have high expectations. I mean, our expectations for Argentina in the World Cup are higher than our expectations for Argentina in the economic World Cup.
Right. Yeah.
It's a World Cup that we are not going to win in 2026, I'm sure.
Right. Well, there is hope, at least.
Yeah. In terms of football in Argentina, and with Messi, there is always hope.
Definitely. So thanks, Nicolás. This has been great. And thank you again for dedicating the time. And as always, you're most welcome to talk to us and to talk to our clients. This has been a great conversation. And thank you for sharing with us your insights.
Oh, thank you again, Horacio. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and being invited to this space.
Happy to have you anytime.
Great. See you next time. Hope with better news.